So why the fuck do you still lose to the Republicans? It's because the Democrats simply don't want to win. So they'd rather fucking lose over and over again.
I want to start with the 2024 autopsy, which you call an...
Okay, this is I'm going to issue a trigger warning. You're going to watch someone get fucked on camera right now. This is head of the DNC, Ken Martin, on Pod Save America, where Jon Favreau is asking the appropriate questions, as a matter of fact, and he doesn't let up. It's ridiculous. This interview is ridiculous.
After action review. When you won the chairmanship in February of 25, you criticized the DNC's refusal to release their 2016 autopsy as exactly what not to do. You said, quote, was there any utility in doing that? And then promised your 2024 autopsy would be different. Your exact quote was, of course it will be released. Why did you change your mind on that?
Well, look, I mean, what I said all along, even when I ran for this position, is that we were going to focus on the things that will help us win the upcoming election, right? Making sure that we learn the right lessons that could help inform our victories. And that's what we've done. We said this when we sent out the press release back in November, saying we weren't going to release the report. We were going to actually keep our focus on those lessons, and we released those lessons. We continue to do that. So it's not completely accurate to say that we didn't release that.
Dude, it is so bad. This is so bad that I think it's like low-key indefensible by even like centrist accounts. Obviously, there's still like weird-ass DNC defenders on the timeline doing their thing, where they turn around and defend the interests of the DNC, even though they're not paid to do so. And I will never understand what leads someone to behave like that. But for the most part, with the exception of like some of the craziest people, most people are looking at this and going, what the fuck do you mean you can't release the autopsy? Just release it, man. It doesn't make any... I mean, the only way this makes sense is because they're worried that the autopsy says exactly what I've been saying leading up to the election and certainly after the election. Israel's a huge part of the reason why they lost.
We're keeping our focus is on the lessons that can actually help us win.
On this show in August, you told me this about releasing the review, quote, we have to do it to give people who invested so much time, energy, and money a sense of what happened and why we lost. Especially why we lost. So what changed between August and December? I understand there are lessons, but those are not the full report. Why not release the full report? What's in the report that you wouldn't want to publicize?
Yeah, there's no smoking gun in the report. And I know that's what everyone's so eager to learn. The smoking gun. Guess what, John?
But if there's no smoking gun, why wouldn't you just release it then?
Because we want to keep the focus on the lessons. Because what ends up happening here is that
It's boring. We just don't want you to fall asleep reading it. You'd be so bored reading the lack of smoking gun. What is this? Oh, yeah, I did see that. Yeah, we watched it live. Yeah, it was incredible. Trump, he still got it sometimes.
People, of course, want to weaponize the report in a way to look backwards, to point fingers, place blame in a way that actually doesn't keep us focused on the upcoming election. But instead, the navel-gazing of focusing backwards actually takes us backwards. We're 189 days from this election, John. What we don't need to be focused on is actually relitigating 2024. What we need to do is learn the lessons of 24 and the years preceding that can help us win this upcoming election. I get why people are obsessed with it, because there's various groups and organizations and people who think there's some sort of smoking gun in there. Guess what, John? In the third closest presidential election in the last 100 years, everything mattered. There's nothing that didn't impact that election.
Why did you spend the money going to 50 states, doing all these interviews, doing all this stuff, and
He's like, everything mattered, not one thing. There wasn't one particular thing. John, believe me, it was everything. It was It was tort reform. There's no smoking gun. There's no one singular issue that was overwhelmingly brought up as a reason.
Doing this report in the first place if you weren't going to release the full results of it. Like, why? Well, I don't get why just you and some of the senior DNC people get to see it, but not most of the DNC members who are, you know, state party chairs. I mean, you know, more than a dozen DNC members told NBC just the other week they want it released, including Congresswoman Delia Ramirez and North Carolina Democratic Party Chair Anderson Clayton. And Anderson said, quote, "Genuinely, what did you all find that we did not?"
Wait, where's the full one? But what the fuck happened while I was gone for a week? Why did I have Customs and Border Patrol ask me if I watch you when I return to this shithole country this morning? Now that you said you've been detained in the past, it makes a little bit more sense. I don't think you got detained for being a fucking HasanAbi head. I mean, it's still ridiculous that you got detained. Petition to call Twitch timeouts detaining chatters. It is still strange that they would ask you about your content consumption and whether you're a fan of mine. But if you've been detained in the past, it's probably because of your social media posts, which is still unacceptable. But probably not because of the, probably not because you're a fan. You can spell the bullshit. Ken Martin is essentially a parody of what everyone hates about politicians. His performance should be a fireable offense. The call to release the autopsy should be more urgent now. Holy shit, we are so fucked. Horrible, embarrassing. Thank you, John, for pressing him on this.
Number. And so, did you have some sort of record that shows we spent any money on that?
I've seen reporting that you did spend money on it. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well that's inaccurate. Okay, the person we asked to do this is an unpaid advisor to the DNC, and so I appreciate where it's coming from, John. But let's just trade in facts on this, right? The reality is we did talk to, hundreds of people. It was an exhaustive exercise to really get at what are those key lessons. And I want to be very clear. There's nothing that changed from what I said on the campaign trail to now, which is
yeah, except for the fact that you said you were going to release the autopsy, and that it would be a mistake not to release the autopsy, and that it would be stupid not to release the autopsy. And now you're saying, no, it's stupid to release the autopsy. So something did change. You made the autopsy, you saw what's in it, and you were like, we can't let anybody know what the fuck's in this thing.
When you were on the campaign trail and you talked about definitely releasing an autopsy and criticized the DNC for not releasing an autopsy in 2016, in your mind, you thought, I'm going to do one, but only release certain lessons and not the full report?
No, what I said at the time is exactly what I've been saying now, which is we have to focus on the things that help us win the future elections. We have to focus on those lessons. We have to do this exercise, by the way.
Yeah. The lessons are we got to pivot to the center more, by the way. I just wanted to tell you guys, like, here are some of our lessons. Pivot to the center harder than we ever have, okay? And also reinstate our unlimited loyalty and support to the nation state of Israel. That's what the autopsy showed. We got punished for not being pro-Israel enough, it seems.
Of conducting this analysis so that we actually learn what happened, not just in 24, but in the years preceding that, John. And so that's where our focus is. I mean, the challenge is, think about this as an executive summary of a, like you said, a 200-page document. And I think what we've put together and what we learn, we are sharing with people so they have full insight into what we actually need to course correct on as we go into these final 189 days left and into the future. So again,
are you going to release? You mentioned an executive summary. Are you going to release an official executive summary? Make that public.
We've been releasing that, John. That's what I've been saying to you.
Well, you said lesson. There's the Democratic playbook, the playbook that you said you can sign up for in DNC for sure. But I know that NBC News said that before Easter, about a month ago, you told DNC officers on a call to expect an executive summary in short order. Officers on that call told NBC they still haven't received one. You told a North Carolina DNC member who was drafting a resolution to force the report's release that a summary was forthcoming, and he backed off based on that promise. So you've been saying in coming weeks on the executive, like when can people expect an
We've already been
summary?
sharing that with a number of folks, and we'll continue to share it with folks, including the DNC and other people. The reality is we're not hiding the ball on this. We have been sharing those things out. Happy to get you over, what we have been sharing out, John. The reality is that there's no smoking gun here. And as much as people would like to keep focusing in on those pieces, what they're ignoring is that we're sharing out the lessons. We have been incorporating those, and we have actually been putting those lessons into action, which I'm most proud of. Look, we're 189 days away from this election. You said on the top end of this that what you care most about is helping us to win elections. Okay, let's focus on the elections coming up, John. You know what?
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to focus on winning them. I feel like an autopsy on what went wrong and when we lost the popular vote in all those states in 2024, and figuring out what went wrong based on a big report is pretty important for everyone to know.
Yeah. I've spent my entire career, John, as you know, since 1990, winning elections up and down the ballot, both in Minnesota and across the country.
I appreciate that.
And I'm happy to talk to you about winning elections. If you want to actually talk about elections, I'm happy to talk to you about those. But again, you're proving the point that I think many folks I think are frustrated in this party, which is people want to turn backwards to relitigate the 2024 election, to point fingers, to place blame, to
I think you want to learn lessons, like you said.
Well, listen, to win elections, if they want to win elections, I'm happy to share what we learn in the way of the lessons on why we lost the 24 election and the years preceding that. Happy to share those. We're sharing those out with everyone. But again, this conversation doesn't help us actually win elections. All it does is continue to turn people inward. What we need to do is focus on the work we need to do in the 189 days. Learn the lessons. And I'm happy to go over what those lessons are. I'm happy to go over them with anyone who wants to talk about them, John. But what I'm not going to do is release a report that turns everyone backwards, trying to either...
I cannot believe he goes on for 30 minutes about how we're controlling the flow of information that's coming out of the autopsy because there's a lot of information in there that we don't want to fucking admit. This is abysmal. We're not moving like a party that wants to win. We're to see folks criticizing Pod Save America's continued attention to the DNC autopsy by saying we should just focus on winning. Getting the best possible understanding of why Democrats lost a winnable election is focusing on winning. Matt, I disagree. The party hiding its head in the sand for most of 2024 turned out great for us. Yeah. This is why I always laugh whenever people on Twitter will be like, the unpaid free DNC boosters on Twitter will be like, Hasan is not a real Democrat. It's like, bitch, I am far closer. Like the average lifelong Democratic Party loyalist voter is far closer to me than at any other point in American history in terms of the anger and resentment that they feel towards the ineptitude demonstrated by the party. Okay? Because those people actually fucking hate the Republicans. Those people unironically want to defeat fascism. Okay? These stupid ass influencers that want to behave like they're getting paid by the DNC do not.
Point fingers or place blame and actually ignore their own responsibility in helping us to fix the situation. The reality is we all have a responsibility. Yourself, myself, everyone, in actually learning those lessons, focusing on the upcoming election.
John should have just gone through the checklist of like things that were, give me a yes or no. Israel was 25% of the blame. You know what I mean? Like, and we could judge his reaction.
Putting them into action so we don't repeat those same mistakes. That's what we've been focused on, John.
So Steve Shale, longtime Democratic strategist who's run Florida for the party, told the Washington Examiner that there's a, quote, financial penalty specifically tied to burying the autopsy because donors want a clearer accounting before recommitting. The DNC...
Oh, that's the other thing. Oh, there's only one language that these guys understand. It's money. And the DNC is actually fucking doing so poorly on their fundraising goals. When you're the opposition party, you're supposed to be running. You're supposed to be running up numbers, filling the coffers, and people just don't want to give money to the DNC.
Is entering April with negative net cash on hand. So even on your own, standard of does this help us win, is it possible that the autopsy decision is actually costing you the money you need to win?
That's just inaccurate, John. And I'm sure you follow the campaign finance reports like I do. We raised $105 million in 2025. A record amount of money for the first year.
You're not have negative cash on hand right now. You don't have debt that's made a negative cash on hand.
But we do have debt, John, and that's because I took out a loan last year to make sure we can make deep investments. You know what we've been doing, John? We've raised a record amount of.
Oh my God, they're so incompetent. Oh my God. Oh my God. They're so fucking unbelievably incompetent, bro. Oh my God, they're running up the fucking tab to do what? What do you have to show for it, dude? I didn't even think about this. Like, the DNC taking out loans to do what exactly? What has been solid so far with the performance of the Democratic Party, the National Democratic Party? Brother, my congressional district really needs you. We have a Zoran adjacent politician named Jamie Belcito, who's currently running behind a Pete Buttigieg-backed establishment candidate. But we could really use someone like you in the community to bolster the campaign. Is there anything we can do? I mean, I'll look at the candidate. What happened to all the fucking money we gave to Kamala Harris? Dude, they burned through that. They melted that shit. That shit's gone. It's just, look at John's face. Dude, imagine melting $1 billion on fire and still losing, and not only losing, but like losing the popular vote. And then these guys still have the audacity to fucking complain about like people in their left flank or something. How much of the Harris campaign was a scam? Campaign squandered a whole lot of money and made plenty of people rich. Parts of the Democratic operation seem like a multi-level marketing scheme. It's a slush fund for the homies, by the way. That's what it is. The consulting fees are incredible. Like, in some ways, I understand why there's so many fucking consultants that yell at me. Because, like, they have it pretty sweet. As long as they keep the Democratic Party's strategy intact, they can keep reliably justifying $200,000 salaries, all this money. Forcing the money to funnel through like ad buys and things like that. You develop decent relationships that way. It's all a fucking scam. And then along the way, someone comes in and has no way to control this person, me, right? I come in and I'm like, no, I don't fuck with this candidate. I like this candidate instead. And now I'm demanding that those candidates are not corporate sponsored. They're not corporate stooges. All of a sudden, and on top of that, like they're not using me as like a consultant. Obviously, they still have their own consultants. They still have their campaign advisors and staffers and whatnot. But it's a very different type of staffer. All of a sudden, a lot of these consultants lose their motion, lose their grip of power within the party ecosystem. And that means they might not be able to get these incredible salaries. So yeah, I'm fucking up the bag for a lot of people.
Money, $105 million. It's the most raised for the first year chair of any DNC chair in the history of this party. And you know what's great? You know what's great about it? We raised in 2017, which is an analogous year, a year right after a presidential loss. Tom Perez raised $40 million less than what we raised this year.
He didn't have the debt that you guys have.
Yes, he did. He had $76 million in debt. And so my point to you is this, John, okay? I mean, we can trade in all of this, but let's actually trade in facts. $105 million was raised. $85 million of it came from grassroots donors, which is a record amount of grassroots donations raised in the history of the Democratic Party. That shows the energy that's out there. The average contribution is $51, by the way, John. And, you know, we raised more than any of the other committees last year. The DS, the DCCC, and I will just tell you this, all of the Republican committees raised more than the DNC. And so that's just a reality of coming out of a year when you lose the presidential election, when you're the party that's out of power. Of course, you're going to not raise as much money as the Republicans. But to suggest that we're not raising money is inaccurate. We raised $32 million. We raised $32 million in the first quarter. But what we're doing that's a little different, John, is we're spending it. We're raising it and we're spending it. Because one of the lessons we learned...
I can't... Okay, listen. I don't know what it is, but there's something about the way he communicates that's so unbelievably annoying. I don't know why. It just comes across as so insincere. I don't know if it's the accent. I don't know if it's like, well, you see, John, like he keeps making it seem like he's agreeing with Jon Favreau, only to vehemently disagree with him, but never changing his tone at all. Yeah, we want to win, which is why we are not going to give you the lessons. We're only going to show you what we want to show you. We want to win, which is precisely the reason why you're never going to find out exactly what caused us to lose. Yes, we want to win. We want to win a lot. Yes, you're right. We've wasted tens of millions of dollars, John, but you might consider that to be a waste, but I personally consider that to be money well spent, John.
But you're spending more than you have. I mean, so you guys have 13.9 million cash on hand, right? I'm reading the report. 13.9 million cash on hand, 18.3 million in debt. So that's roughly negative $4.4 million. And I know it's a tough environment for the party out of power, but the DSCC and the DCCC and these Senate candidates have plenty of money. They're all doing great. So it seems like this is an issue unique to the DNC.
That's not accurate, John. Listen,
what part is not accurate?
The reality is we're spending money as we raise it to win elections and to build infrastructure. We have invested significant amounts of money, record investments in Virginia and New Jersey, investments in Mississippi in their state legislative races to help them flip the state's the Republican supermajority in their state legislature, investments in the Miami mayoral race to help us win a Democratic elected mayor in the first time in 30 years, investments in the PSC races in Georgia to help us win the first two non-federal elected races, statewide races in 20 years in their history. Investments throughout the country.
The Republican National Committee entered April with $117 million on hand. The Democratic National Committee entered April with negative $4.4 million on hand, inclusive of debts. Clown show, dude. There have been significant flips. I know this because all of my haters who are free DNC advertisers love talking about, like, I don't know, the fucking constable in Georgia 17 or whatever used to be a Republican for 78 years and now it's a Democrat. Like, they love doing that shit. They're like, oh, duh, what do you mean? Oh, anytime someone wins like a super low level local election, I hear about it in my replies because people are like, oh, I'm sorry. Why aren't you bringing up the fact that the comptroller in Terre Haute, Indiana is a blue dog Democrat, actually? Why is this not motivating you?
Oh, did he come on your stream? Did he come on your broadcast, the Win Comptroller in Terre Haute, Indiana? No, I didn't think so. It's like, well, I'm glad. I'm glad that this is like, I'm glad that the enmity towards the Republican Fascist Party has translated to some electoral victories. But like, you know, everyone is trying to fucking do their best here. It's so funny. Like they do what Ken is doing here. Okay, straight up. Terre Haute doesn't have a comptroller. Fake news, Haas. Okay, I'm making shit up. I'm making names up. Terre Haute, Indiana doesn't exist. It's a figment of your imagination. Okay. It's a city most famous for having a prison in it, right? Isn't that what Terre Haute is? Terre Haute? I know, Haute, not hot.
Up and down the ballot, and investments in infrastructure, including the largest investments ever in a 50-state party strategy, where we're making the biggest investments in building out the infrastructure of our state and local party committees. You know, one of the lessons we learned, by the way, John, from the last election is that we waited too long to spend money. In fact, the Republican Party, starting in 2020, right after Biden won that race, the Democratic Party packed up the campaign infrastructure. Trump and the Republicans kept going. They kept spending money. They kept organizing. They kept communicating with voters. We did not. And as a result, they had a 3.5-year-long head start and going into the 2024 election. We had 10 million Democrats who actually chose the couch instead of voting in 2024. And part of the reason why is...
Okay, why? How? Why did that happen? If only there was an autopsy that looked at exactly why and how that happened. If only we could have access to this secret information and make up our own damn minds. I mean, this should be a moment of vindication for the DNC if their strategy was so profound and that they just simply didn't go hard enough. They didn't pivot hard enough to the right, right? If the DNC has that information, right? If they didn't go pro-Israel enough, if they weren't like seen as being sufficiently pro-genocide, I feel like they would probably reveal that autopsy result, right? Oh, we looked at the autopsy and we found out that the big problem was the people were demanding more Liz Cheney. Okay? The people were demanding more Liz Cheney. People were throwing their bras on stage when Liz Cheney was coming up. Okay? They were demanding Dick Cheney. They didn't want just Liz. They wanted Dick and Liz. Okay? Turns out that's what they were demanding. That's what the autopsy showed. Can't show you. Cannot show you the autopsy. I really want to, but I can't. But that's what it says. Okay. It says the people were like $50,000 in tax credits for small businesses that start up in underserved neighborhoods. Well, golly, my mother was a small business, just like Kamala Harris's mother was. Wow. If only I could hear more about how Kamala Harris was a fucking small business. That's what I needed to hear more. That's why I didn't vote. Okay. Is that what the autopsy showed? Because if that's the autopsy, if that is what the autopsy showed, you probably would have no issues revealing that, right? You would probably release it immediately. Be like, see, we told you we didn't pivot right enough. We didn't go hard enough. Biden being senile and not stepping down combo with supporting Israeli genocide cost the party an election to a flagrantly corrupt neo-Nazi who failed to overthrow the government the first time. They don't believe there's no smoking gun. They just prefer donor money and losing. Yes. There's an institutionally entrenched chunk of this political party that is not interested in wielding power or helping you in any way. They want to take donor money and spend the next couple of decades making excuses for why things never get better, and they need to be purged. Want to know why they lose elections? Israelis buy House and Senate seats. Michael Bloomberg sets money on fire to make it a chore to buy or customize a gun, but only in blue states. They deliberately fall for every obvious bait wedge issue to show how morally superior they are. They don't want to give away free game to the Republicans. Yeah, except the Republicans know exactly why the Democrats lose. That's why they win. Okay? That's why they won, and that's why they continue to win, even though their fucking policies are so unbelievably toxic and so unbelievably backwards that people, and there's been polling on this, people that vote Republican don't believe the impact of the Republican legislative agenda. When asked about certain policies and once implemented, the impact of said policies, they go, no, that's not real. Don't make me read the New York Times report on former Trump supporters. As a matter of fact, I do want to read that one because it's really good. After I'm done with Joanne Reed's show, I really, really want to go through that because there is some fucking real gems in there. Republicans, like the Republican legislative agenda is so unbelievably villainous, so unbelievably toxic, so cancerous that Republicans that vote Republican do not believe in the agenda and the impact when they are asked about certain policies that they voted for. And we saw an example of this with abortion. For years, they said abortion is murder. For years, they said we have to restrict female bodily autonomy in this country. They didn't use those terms. They just said abortion is murder, and we have to stop this murder from taking place. And we saw exactly what happened in those red states one by one. They rolled back the abortion protections that existed, and then people voted in ballot measures to democratically reinstate female bodily autonomy. Okay? Piece by piece all around the country. So we know this to be true. We knew this to be true when the Democrats were running for president. So why the fuck do you still lose to the Republicans? It's because the Democrats simply don't want to win. Or if they win, they want to win on their own terms. If they lose on their own terms, that's still fine as long as they maintain the terms. Okay? If it meant that they would have to forego unlimited corporate sponsorships from the for-profit healthcare industry by pushing forward unilaterally or universally Medicare for all is the forefront of their campaigning, something that the base is demanding, something that independents want, something that Republicans would benefit from. If they were to do that, then Aetna and Blue Cross Blue Shield and all these other companies would no longer give them money. God forbid, they might even spend against them. Same with Israel, same with AIPAC. And they can't do that. So they'd rather fucking lose over and over again. And that's, in many respects, what Ken Martin's job is. It is to maintain this position.